A very good evening to one and all. This is Mohini Chaudhary, Assistant Professor and CSI Co-Convener at VIT. So, on behalf of CSI-VIT, I welcome you all for the event, A Story of Riches to Rags, Indian IT Industry. I would like to welcome the speaker, Dr. Saurabh Mehta, sir, who is the CAO of VIT and also the professor. He is an experienced professional engineer and educator with a demonstrated history of working wireless systems. Your smile is heavenly. And he is also working as a consultant at Sun Wireless Technologies. So I welcome you, sir, for this event, and I would now hand it over to Saurabh, sir. Sir, you can start with the session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Mohini. And I will start with my presentation. Just let me know if my screen is like visible to everyone. I'll put it on maximum. Can you please give me the feedback? Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to thank computer department Professor Arun Chavan sir, then Professor Amit Nerurkar sir, Moini madam for giving me this opportunity to actually interact with our computer and IT student. I generally never get chance to actually talk with them and interact with them. So I think this is a good opportunity for me to interact with all of you. So before I start, I just wanted to bring few points to your attention, or you can say it is kind of like a disclaimer. The disclaimer number one is that I am not a historian, and why actually I choose this particular topic is that because there is a great success story behind Indian IT industry. I mean, within a few decades, kind of achievement that we have achieved, it's phenomenal. In fact, everyone in the world, they recognize this particular achievement, right? So, and then I feel that thing, the story behind this success need to be told to everyone. So this story is about that particular, like a few important decisions in from the Indian perspective, or I can say from the Indian IT perspective. And what I wanted to bring is that my little experience with some of the stalwart in this particular like a field. So whatever today I'm going to present, it is based on like a couple of things. Number one, based on my own like a study and research. Number two, I been, you can say, been privileged to actually meet with several kind of like a stalwart of IT industry. And one of my point in discussion is always about this thing, that how is India able to turn the table in IT industry. And from those particular like interaction, I gathered a few things, and that is what I just wanted to share with all of you. So these are the things. So do not take my things as a like a from the history point of view. There might be some kind of like a factual, or maybe some facts and figure might be wrong. So I request everyone, maybe you can always cross check it. But what I wanted to say is about like a certain turning point and incidents which play a major role in development of IT industry in India, right? So starting with this, I will be talking about like my institute, maybe for a minute. I'm sure maybe some of you are from outside VIT and might not be much aware about the VIT. So Vidyalankar Institute of Technology that we have established in year 1999, and our founder, Professor Chandrasekhar S. Deshpande. So he was basically a class 1 officer with Indian Railway Services, and later on he also worked at TIFR and many other organizations. But his passion was is for education, and with his vision and blessing, we started with Vidyalankar Institute of Technology in 1999. So it's a 11-acre campus, and we have basically five undergraduate branch: information technology, computer engineering, electronics and telecommunication, electronics engineering, biomedical engineering, and we are also running basically four postgraduate program. One of them is management program, and another three programs are our AME program. So one is in information and technology, another one is in computer engineering, and third one is actually in electronics and telecommunication. And we are also actually running PhD program in computer science or computer engineering. So at any given point of time, maybe we have more than like a 3,000 plus students in our campus, and it's a very beautiful like a campus. And right now, because of the pandemic, we are working online, and also right now we are interacting online. But in future, if we get a chance, definitely I would like to meet all of you and interact with you on a physical presence. And another thing is that like three of our departments are NBA accredited consecutively for a second time. And last year we also got A plus accreditation by NAEC, and getting A plus in a first cycle, it's a big achievement. So that's all about like my institute. So going further, another motivation for me to talk about this particular topic is, as all of you know, I mean, just last month, actually, we have completed 25 years of internet in India. I don't know how many of you are aware, but in 1995, and in 1995, 15th August, that was like the first, I can say, officially start of like internet. And that time internet was provided by BSNL and CNL. So, and at that time I was in a school actually. So it was like a very fascinating story, because in magazines and newspaper we supposed to read about internet a lot. And maybe your generation might not be knowing about that kind of like excitement, but we were very very really excited about that thing. And I have seen my first computer in 1997, and I made my first email ID in year of like a 1996 or 1997, something during that time. So it was a very thrilling experience, and that time we used to connect with internet with a telephone, right? So and this 25 years, or I can say 2.5 year decade, it's like phenomenal growth that we have seen. And right now, if we look at it, the reach of internet, I can say almost it has been reached to 40 to 45 crores people in India. So it's a very very big penetration, I mean. So this is, I can say, at the fourth level. The first, the great penetration that we have seen is about like a radio. So radio almost become like a ubiquitous, right? Wherever you go you can easily find a radio set. And then came the TV technology, and so wherever you go right now, maybe you will find television. But still, I can say television has not reached what radio was able to do. And the third is about like a mobile telephone, right? So mobile telephone has also reached to like many people. And after that, if there is any other technology which has reached to this many people, is like the internet in India, right? So that was also like a part of my talk, I mean, because there are many many actually threads when I'm talking about IT industry. And there is a progress from so many different perspective. I don't think so maybe within a like a 45 minutes will be able to cover all this thing. But all these points are actually related to each other, and then they are converging into the success that right now we all are enjoying, right? So just to bring to your notice that India is not only successful only in like IT and telecom sector. There are other sector as well, and they also have a very very fascinating story. Maybe some other day, if I get a time, well, definitely I can talk about those kind of like things with you. So the first one is aerospace sector. I mean, I can say India is one of the leading actually country in aerospace sector, especially with rocket technology and taking a satellite for other countries. So I think recently all of you have even seen those kind of like the news or this thing where India have launched at a time 100 or more than like 100 satellite, and now India is a major player in developing satellite for other countries, and it has been very respectful. And India has also taken so many like big project like a Chandrayaan, Mars, and successful mission. So that's a very wonderful story to know. So after that, there is a nuclear sector. So even in a nuclear India, like, I mean, if you look at from the history perspective, any particular country who is having a history of only like 70 odd years, right, and that too with very limited resources, very limited kind of like the development that we have seen to come up to this particular stage is amazing. I don't know how many of you are knowing, but India has completely developed its own technology in thorium, not in uranium, in thorium, which is a bit difficult and a complex one. But I can say India is kind of like an authority in that thing and has made tremendous progress in this particular like a sector. And application of like a nuclear sector is not just limited to only like a energy or you can say atom bomb, but it has spread across the different like a section. Even in I can say in agriculture, we have a, like a major use of like a nuclear technology to make our the foods dry and making them like a fungus free and all that stuff. So it is a great story about that thing. I mean, it's really good. So many scientists, engineers have actually worked so hard for so many years, and because of them we all are actually getting a very successful fruit right now. So then afterwards there is a IT and telecom sector, right? So anyways, I'm going to talk about that particular part, so not discussing much over here. And then also about like railways. I mean, so railways, when I say, so it is not like in terms of advanced technology, but in terms of like the reach and kind of like a railway network we have and the complex things that we are handling. It's amazing. I mean, no one in the world right now it's dealing this kind of like a traffic, or you can say this kind of like a the complex network. So railway Britishers actually bring, and Indians have mastered over that, right? And we have developed so many like great projects in Indian railway that is unbelievable. And just recent one I just wanted to tell you is a Konkan railway a few years back. I mean, few years, when I say, it's like a two decades back. So that was like a some kind of like a record breaking kind of project that we have done. And this railway, it's also like a very fascinating word, right? So anyways, as I said, like today's our focus is mainly going to be like a IT sector, so I just wanted to discuss about that particular part. So going ahead, so few facts and figures that I wanted to put in front of you. So right now our IT industry is, you can say, almost like a 180 billion dollar the total kind of like a revenue it is generating. And revenue, or I can say turnover, that is covering 180 billion. So it's a huge. And if we look at from the percentage in GDP, it is more than actually 8%, or you can say near to 8% of a GDP is actually coming out of IT industry. And there are nearly 4.5 million professionals who are actually working in IT industry. You will be surprised to know that thing, that in COVID, still, I mean, there are many sectors which are struggling because of the COVID thing. To give an example, aviation, or maybe you can say the traveling sector or a hotel industry, still they are like a struggling. But IT was the only sector which actually become a ready, especially Indian IT sector, become a ready within a 3-4 weeks, and they immediately start working, because all those IT sector engineers and all those things, they were like, supporting some other countries, kind of like a system, right? Many of our companies are actually supporting European companies, supporting US companies, Canada. So it was like a necessary, and I can say they are getting right now all these services because of the IT industry. So that's a tremendous kind of like a contribution that Indian IT sector has done, and it has given major impact in world of like IT sector. Yeah, there are always like, scope for improvement. Anyway, we'll be discussing about that part as well. But as of now, I can say that thing, that India is a king in basically service and BPO sector. So when it comes to like a service sector, India has its own authority. In BPO or a KPO, India is like a ruling. And then third one is like a product where there is a huge scope for improvement, and I think India has started doing something related to that. Now many Indian startup, or I can say many Indian companies, they are actually coming up with developing a product, and that products are becoming, more and more acceptable at the world level. So that's a really, I can say, the good kind of like a migration which is happening. But that doesn't mean that we do not need to do in service and BPO sector. These are our fortress that we need to hold, and beside that we also need to expand ourselves in a product sector, so which is going on. And I'm sure that some of you, or maybe one of you, might be the future king in that particular like a respect, and I might be discussing the same, your success story to a future generation, right? Okay. So if we look at some of the top companies in service sector, so number one is a TCS, Infosys, HCL Technologies, Wipro, Tech Mahindra. So all these five companies you see are originally Indian origin company, and almost you can say they have a turnover of crores and crores of rupees. Even I don't know what is the figure, but it's a huge figure, and they are the major contributor in, I can say, our IT industry. Similar to when I'm talking about like a top five a BPO company, so TCS, Wipro, Infosys, Genpact, Aegis Limited. I think Aegis as having some of its roots in outside India, but I can say almost become like an Indian company, and actually having a more Indian employer compared to like what they have as a foreign employer. So these are some of the top companies that we have in like a two sectors. So it is very interesting to know that how this kind of like a turnaround happens, what kind of like a people who have actually contributed in taking India to this particular path. India has to do so many things. I mean, so many things. We are facing a problem, and right now we all are going through a very bad economy situation. So we need to come out of this. But still, if you look at those particular like a story, we feel that thing, right? It's a some positive vibration, or I can say the positive energy. Basically, you try to draw from this kind of like, stories. So it is always fascinating to me that who are the people who actually started this kind of like a story, and who are the people who actually, work behind that thing, and they made this industry right now in its current state. So it's very interesting to know about their incident, about their story. And I'm sure that there are so many engineers, there are so many academicians, so many entrepreneurs, so many like, people who are actually involved in this development. But anyways, we may not be able to take those many stories, but whichever like I feel that important, or with whom I am aware, as well as I said, this particular stories has been bring to me in lots of like a conversation. So that stories I'm going to narrate to you, right? So starting with this one. So the first one, FC Kohli. How many of you know about FC Kohli? Anyone has any idea? I'm sorry, I cannot able to see your chat box over here, but maybe I can ask a host to just prompt me. Anyone knows about FC Kohli? Who is FC Kohli? So FC Kohli is considered as a father of like a software IT industry in India, and I have been privileged that I got a chance to share a dais with him. In fact, we both are actually part of one organization which is called as IEEE. So he was receiving lifetime achievement award, and I was receiving like a speaker award. And that time I got this opportunity to discuss with him, and that time we I really had a great time, and I heard so many stories from him about like IT industry, what kind of like a difficulty they face, and how they actually get succeeded in making that particular company as a successful. So he was the first, I can say, the founder and the CEO of a TCS. Right now, all of you have heard about TCS, right? There might not be any engineer who might not have heard about the Tata Consultancy Services. So this is the man who is like behind that particular like starting of the company. So in early 1967, 68, he started with this Tata Consultancy Services, and within a few years he made it that company as a very successful company, started to getting like a order from outside. So I'll be narrating this thing. So his full name is Fakir Chand Kohli. So basically he is uh, before partition he is basically from actually Pakistan, and considered as like father of Indian IT industry. And so his first job as a like he studied at foreign university, he studied at MIT. Then after working some time in USA, he come back to like India, and he joined. Actually, Tata gave him the offer to join them. So he was initially was with like a Tata Electrical company where he worked for couple of years. And that time he bring lots of like new kind of like a practices and innovation that he has observed outside India, and he tried to bring it over there. So looking at his passion and looking at his like interest, so Tata gave him a responsibility that why don't you like start with one particular like a company, right? I mean, so and this company will only mainly focus on the upcoming field of IT, right? Right now we all say that thing there is a upcoming field of like IoT, or you can say, right, even though when we say upcoming, but it has already been established. But at that time people have heard about a computer or heard about like the software and the hardware only in books. I mean, there were not like many example of that. That is another very interesting thing, that in 1960s, late 60s actually, IBM came to India, and IBM actually started some kind of like a work in India. And that time they were having like giant kind of like a computer and all this thing. But because he was educated at USA, he took this particular like challenge, and then he set up this particular like a company. And the first job they started to work is electronic data processing, or I can say more into like data collection kind of like a work. So what they have made, so they started with like earlier in meals and all this thing, we used to have like a punching card. So this punching card is actually used for your attendance, and then for other purposes, or in case if you wanted to access some particular like a facility or something, you have to use your punch card. So that was this thing, but it was in analog form. So first thing that he tried to do is to take it into like with the electronic system as a like a, so making a punch card with some kind of like a electronic system, so that all this data could be collected easily. You can easily handle all the manpower, and you can do many kind of like a work. And then he was also supporting system to Tata Electrical Company, where they have to calculate the load dispatch and load balancing and all that thing. So that was their first, actually the Tata company becomes their first actually client to introduce electronic data processing. And so Tata Steel, or you can say the Tata, they have some other units, they were the first one to buy that particular solution, and that's how the journey started. And in that particular like a journey, they were also trying to get order from this one. And there was one very very successful project that they have done is a Semcom. So Semcom is uh, kind of like a project where it does the like a data processing and data analytics and all this thing in those days, and that was done for like a Swiss company. So that was a very very successful like a project that they have run. So now as I'm talking about enough about Kohli, so let's see small video of him where he's talking about his own life, and it will be very interesting to know. So let's see that video, and let me know if you are facing any particular like a voice problem or there, right?
Welcome back. You're watching Passion to Win. Our next story is about an IT giant who laid the groundwork for the rise of a $100 billion Indian IT industry, and he was responsible for the development of the software industry in the country. Dr. F.C. Kohli, the founder of Tata Consultancy Services, or TCS, is sometimes described as the Henry Ford of IT services. Let's take a look at his story.
Born and educated in what was then Pakistan, FC Kohli had two choices after college: a commission in the Navy or a scholarship to study abroad.
I was born in Peshawar, which is now part of Pakistan. My schooling was in Peshawar. My college education was in Government College Lahore, which was at that time the topmost college in northern India. And then I had two things in 45. I had a commission in Navy, and also I got a scholarship, Government of India scholarship to go abroad. So finally I chose the scholarship and didn't go in Navy, not anything against the armed forces. And in 46, I went abroad. I graduated in power engineering at Queen's, which is in Canada. That is considered the number one university in Canada. And then I worked with Canadian General Electric for a year, and then went for doing the masters in again in electrical engineering and power engineering at MIT.
After MIT, Dr. Kohli was offered a job with the Tatas.
And when I was finishing that, of course, I was in touch with the education secretary posted from Government of India at Washington all through this, and they offered me a position with Tata's at the end of which I did accept, and the Tatas arranged for my further training in power systems with Connecticut Valley Power Exchange and New England Power System for about 6 months, and after that I came and helped Tata Electric Company to set up what you call the system management system, or do you call it load dispatching.
Finally, when the Tatas decided to set up a computer consultancy company, they asked Dr. Kohli to take charge.
Okay, so it's a bit like a long video, but all of you are interested. Maybe I can give you this video to the organizer. Later on, you can see that thing. So I just wanted to show, and he is considered as a living legend, and he's a 90 plus year, but still like a very sharp memory and like able to like and will be very happy when you just start discussing with him related to like the starting days of like IT industry and all this thing. So it was very good to know him, and I really come to know many things about like a IT industry, right? So that's like introduction to FC Kohli, the father of I can say, or IT industry. So now another like a great story, it's about like during that time. Now basically I divided it my talk into like a three part, and three part is like that before like from the 60s to I can say up to the 80s, and then from the 80s up to the 90, and then 90 onwards up to this particular like a time, right? So I mean, recent like a development and all other thing, all of you are aware, so I do not need to discuss much. So basically I'm going to discuss about this two particular like a part, and that too my stories will go in a non-linear way. So maybe sometimes I'll be going into flashback, then again I'm going to discuss about like a future and all this thing. So now we started our journey with like Tata Consultancy, and then Tata Consultancy was becoming like a great leader in that particular field. And Tata Consultancy started to actually get orders even from the IBM. And that time IBM used to supply their mainframe computer, and that time the case was like that whomsoever is supplying you the hardware, they need to supply the software with you. And then generally you get money twice. One, you when you sell this your hardware and software to them, and another is like maintaining those particular like a software and the hardware. And actually for them the earning source was like maintenance contract. So that was like a huge money. And because the company was like a small, so some part of that they have actually started to giving it to Tata company. And then Tata company started to get like their engineers and all this thing basically started to get like a trained in this particular area. And then they try to understand that how to write like the customize like a software or develop a customized kind of like a system. So that's how the story basically begins. And at that time there were like many kind of like a restriction. I don't know how many of you were like knowing about that thing, but that time it was like a license raj. So for any company that you wanted to establish, or if you wanted to start your own business, it becomes like a very difficult one. Nowadays all of you are not facing that situation. If you just wanted to start your company, maybe few things you complete it and then you are ready to go. In fact, right now is the best time I can say for any kind of like an entrepreneurship kind of like a job that you wanted to do, right? So this early 70s and 80s TCS people mostly were doing those kind of like a work. And they were also working on like some kind of like a software, or they are getting some kind of like the work from some other companies, and that started. And meantime they were also facing this government regulation and all that thing, and that was like a major problem for them to get even some kind of like the orders from outside, or actually to deploy somebody outside and then working on those kind of like a project. And during the same era there was like one more particular entrepreneur, or I can say the very big figure that started to emerge. And that particular like a figure that I'm going to talk, let me show you that video, is the Narayan Murthy. So it's a very fascinating story of like Narayan Murthy, and it is a perfect example of like IT entrepreneur, right? So I hope that all of you are knowing much about like Narayan Murthy, so I do not need to speak much on that thing. But in a couple of minutes I just wanted to show his entire journey, that how actually Infosys become a big giant. And before actually Infosys become like a big giant, they there was like a twice incident in their like entire like career, where company was about to lose their brand value, or you can say about to like break, and then not making any kind of like a profit. So it's a very struggle kind of like a story they have. And Infosys is the only first company, I can say. Right now it is not the only, there are many other, especially in startup. Now it has become like a very interesting kind of like a factor, that they give you as a like stock option. So what is stock option? That instead of giving you the full payment, they give you some share of their company. And if you spend certain years in this company, and you actually contributing that company to grow, automatically the share price is going to go high, and you will also going to become like a rich. So this kind of like a system was started by actually Narayan Murthy and Infosys. So let's see the story very quickly. So I hope that all of you have enjoyed this particular like a video, which is actually capturing his entire like a story. So as I said, like there were like a two instances in his life where company was about to collapse, or almost I can say collapse. So and from that he started to actually gaining a momentum. For him, the biggest push for Infosys came in year 1998, where people started to worry much about Y2K problem, and immediately he started to get so many orders from the different companies, and to fix this particular like a problem. And then that was like his footstep in I can say the service sector in USA. And after 1991 he also started to get lots of like a order from like a US companies related to like making a software for them, or doing some kind of like a customization for the company. But it was not in the name of like Infosys. They were doing this kind of like a job under the label of some other companies, right? But what it actually helps him is to build some kind of like a brand or a reliability. People start to understand that this particular guy is like is able to do the work, and is going to give us like a full support to us. And then that's some kind of like its own branding has been started. And because of that, people are actually started to get like, I mean, the company started to get lots of like orders. And the seven members that you have seen, including like a Narayan Murthy, I mean, couple of them later on they just left the Infosys. But then there was an Neil Kant, and so all of you might be knowing him, that he was a main architecture for our like Aadhaar card, and he pushes that particular like a program, right? So he was even a chairman at that time in Infosys. And so Infosys is not only about like the company, but it is kind of like a part of like a Indian culture also. Why is it a part of Indian culture? Because this particular company has bring the India's soft power, intellectual power to the world, and then shown them that no, India is capable of doing lots of work. And then after like 1999, when actually I'm going to talk about that point also. So when Indian government actually opened up 100% FDI in this IT sector, so Infosys was the first one to take the advantage of this thing, and then started to developing so many collaborations and so many kind of like a client base in USA. So that's in general like a story. Now when we are talking about any particular like a success story, it is not just about some people, or only about like some entrepreneur who are doing the courage, but it also important that your country, or you can say your political system, also support to that idea, and they should be able to see some kind of like a potential in that stream, and have some visionary leaders into that. So in my next slide, I wanted to talk about this two particular like a visionary person. So I'm sure that all of you know about like a Rajiv Gandhi. I do not need to talk much on his life and all this thing. All of you are aware. So why I'm taking a Rajiv Gandhi into this presentation? The number one, that he was a very tech savvy person. That I think after Rajiv Gandhi, right now, another tech savvy person that I'm looking at it is like Sri Narendra Modi ji. And before that, I think I have seen only like or heard about only about like a Rajiv Gandhi, who was like extremely like a tech savvy. And he was always of the opinion that thing that if we are not able to like bring new technology into India, India is never going to make a progress to it. And he had that particular kind of like a vision. So one particular master stroke that he has done is that in 1984, when he become like a prime minister for the first time, he immediately tried to reduce the export and import the import duty on hardwares and all this thing, and all the rules and regulation related to like software industry and hardware industry, to make it like a very simple, so that it becomes like a more favorable for many companies to come up and they start their business, and they can easily get those kind of like a required expertise, or a required kind of like a machinery. So that was a major push in IT industry. So that was like I can say the major contribution from his side. Another contribution from his side is that he was able to do and bring many technocrats with him, right? I mean, generally we have seen that thing that political people, they do not understand the value of technology, or they do not have any kind of like a vision. So they do not respect that much to technocrats and do not bring those people on boards, right? So I'm going to talk about two specific instances where Rajiv Gandhi has played a major role in that thing. But before I go to that particular part, let me also talk about Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. So he also played a major role in IT actually industry growth, because in 1999 when he was a prime minister, the first very important decision that from the economic front that he has taken is that he allowed 100% FDI investment, that is called as a foreign direct investment in India. And because of that move, so many MNCs started to come to India. So right now, all of you are looking at those kind of like companies, big companies who are establishing their campus, and they are recruiting our Indian talent. So it is just because of that particular like a policy, right? So this two policies has played a major role in, I can say, growing our like IT industry. And for that we always need to be like thank to their visions, and thanks to their particular like steps that they have taken, and how they were actually working at the national level. There were also some people who were actually working at the state level. So I wanted to mention about one particular person, is the Chandrababu Naidu. Chandrababu Naidu was actually a key member in a Vajpayee government to take that particular like as a decision to that we need to like started to invite a people. And I don't know how many of you are actually knowing, but Chandrababu is also known as the IT man of India, or IT politics wala man in India. So he is also like a very keen, having a very good like a vision about that thing. At that time in 1998 1999, he actually established a first, I can say, IT park. I mean, before that also there were like a IT hubs and all this thing. I'll also come to that part, but he took it on a very large scale. So he actually developed like high tech city in Hyderabad, and then lots of people started to he started to inviting people over there, that why don't you come to Hyderabad and do your like IT. And he gave so many kind of like tax exemption and economic kind of like a freedom. And he was also the task force member of like Indian IT like a policy and all that thing. So at the state level, if I know or whom I have seen as a like a very visionary like a leader in to that one, is like a Chandrababu Naidu. And another his contribution was like bringing e-governance into like a Indian system. In his state, he started with the e-governance. So right now, what we are looking at it right now at the national level, you see that for everything, you just go to the portal, you type your complaints, and I mean, all those kind of like information. You can see your progress of your file or whatever you have seen. So that was actually started way back in, I can say, 1999 in 2000, in that particular era. And he was giving a lots of push over there. So right now you can say, because of the pandemic, so many people are now adapting to like this kind of like a remote working environment, or you can say working from home, and use of like a technology. But at that time he made a mandatory for all his ministers and bureaucrats and all this thing to use of like a computer and ICT technology. And at that time he was like taking the online meetings and everything. So I can say that thing, it was like a pioneering things to do this kind of like a stuff in India. And obviously credit goes to him. So these, I can say, the people from the political background who plays like a major role in IT. Obviously there are like it is not like an individual thing. There are lots of people, bureaucrats are actually involved into like making policies, implementing them, and decision. But the end results is because of their visions, right? So now once again, I will just go back to like a Rajiv Gandhi's time. and already I said that I'll be keep coming forth and back between like a time. So Rajiv Gandhi, I wanted to mention about two basically technocrats. Why this only about two technocrats? Because they are actually related with the IT industry growth. So one is Sri Sam Pitroda. I am sure that most of you have heard about him. So what's Sam Pitroda? He was actually working in USA, and Rajiv Gandhi actually called him that why don't you come to India and do something for that. So at that time, I don't know how many of you are knowing, but even to get a telephone, you have to wait for years and years. And if you wanted to get the telephone very early, maybe you have to go by like a non ethical and professional path by giving bribe to the people and then getting the phones and all this thing. So he completely revolutionized, I can say, the telecom sector. And because of that, people are started getting like a telephone like so easily. I mean, you just fill the form and then within certain time you are going to get a call. Everywhere there was like a connectivity. People can I don't know, all of you might have seen the booth, ISD booth and STD booth or a PCO booth. So at every nook and corner, people have started with those kind of like a booth. And using coins, you can just try to connect with the people so easily. So basically, he tried to establish this kind of like a network. Now it also give boost to IT industry. Why? Because of those kind of like a line and other thing. When we started with like internet, it becomes very easy to add up that particular like a technology, right? And at that time, he also open up the VSAT line. Generally VSAT line is nothing but a satellite link. So those kind of like a satellite link, dedicated satellite link, was given to different kind of IT companies. And with those particular satellite link, they are able to make a 24 by 365 days connection with their American clients and all this thing. So many of our IT companies are actually able to serve them without even going to the client's office. So ultimately it gives effect on the cost of the operation. And then also it gives like more kind of like a confidentially. So that particular kind of like credit goes to him, that he was able to do that thing. Now another great technocrat is Dr. Vijay Bhatkar. I am not sure how many of you are knowing, but he is the man behind actually making the first supercomputer in India. So we Dr. Vijay Bhatkar, and he is kind of like a founder of like a CDEC. Right now, all of you might have heard about like a CDEC, right? So that is the compute advanced computing group, and they are also running lots of like a courses, and they do lots of like a consultancy and all this thing. So Dr. Vijay Bhatkar. So in that time, India was in bad need of like a supercomputer. That no, we required supercomputer because of the many reason. Number one reason was that the weather prediction, and India was highly dependent on agricultural sectors, and in agriculture, weather plays a major role. So to predict the weather in a proper way, you have to do very complex kind of like calculation and all this thing. And for that thing, India were like requiring supercomputer. So Rajiv Gandhi actually asked the Americans to supply them the supercomputer, but they said no. Why? Because the supercomputer, once you get, it is a kind of like a tool to develop so many different technology. And they were really worried that if India is going to get this kind of like a supercomputer, so India is going to make like a use it in weapon development, especially in missile development program, then even it's in nuclear program and some other kind of like a uses. So they don't want India to make that kind of like a progress. So that was a huge like embarrassed situation for like Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi was very depressed. So one day he just like called few scientists who are like known in that particular area. And one of the scientists was Dr. Vijay Bhatkar. So he put up this particular like incident to them. So Vijay Bhatkar, he actually took up the challenge that why don't you just give us some kind of like a seed funding, and we'll make a supercomputer for you. And that was happened in 87 88, and supercomputer was ready within a 3 years. I think in 1991 it was ready. So supercomputer is not playing direct role into the IT industry, but it is a very important that it is giving the image of India to a people that even if you try to stop us, we will do this thing. And it was a major, I can say, boost to so many peoples, and it gives, like, motivated so many entrepreneurs that okay, that we can do so many things. So it was a very very inspiring kind of like a story. So let me just show you one small video on story of a Param. And I don't know how many of you know, but India is now considered as one of the major player in supplying supercomputer to other world, right? So let me just play this video for you. So it's a brief work of Dr. Vijay Bhatkar.
वेलकम टू अमेजिंग फैक्ट्स। आज हम बात करेंगे फादर ऑफ इंडियन सुपर कंप्यूटर विजय भाटकर की। दुनिया ने जब जब इंडिया को अपनी टेक्नोलॉजी के दम पर चुनौती दी है, तब तब इंडिया ने उसे अपनी काबिलियत के रूप में मुंहतोड़ जवाब दिया है। इंडियन सुपर कंप्यूटर की खोज भी कुछ इस तरीके से ही हुई थी। आपको बता दें कि उस समय सुपर कंप्यूटर सैटेलाइट्स और न्यूक्लियर वेपन बनाने में महत्वपूर्ण योगदान देता था, और उस समय इंडिया यूएसए से क्रे सुपर कंप्यूटर खरीदता था। पर लेट 1980 में यूएसए ने क्रे सुपर कंप्यूटर के एक्सपोर्ट को पूरी तरीके से बंद कर दिया था, जिसकी वजह से इंडिया की इकोनॉमी में काफ़ी असर पड़ा। हद तो तब हो गई थी जब सारी डेवलप्ड कंट्री ने इंडिया को सुपर कंप्यूटर बनाने के प्रोसीजर तक बताने पर भी बैन लगा दिया था, क्योंकि उन्हें लगा कि डेवलपिंग कंट्री इस जानकारी को मिसाइल और वॉर प्लेन बनाने में यूज़ करेगी। हर तरफ से निराशा हाथ लगने के बाद इंडिया ने एक साइंटिफिक कम्युनिटी बनाई CDAC के नाम से, सेंटर फॉर डेवलपमेंट ऑफ एडवांस्ड कंप्यूटिंग, इन मार्च 1988। इस कम्युनिटी का गोल था कि इंडिया अपना खुद का सुपर कंप्यूटर बनाए जो साइंटिफिक प्रॉब्लम्स और अदर डेवलपमेंटल प्रॉब्लम्स को हाई स्पीड कंप्यूटेशन तरीके से सॉल्व कर सके। इस प्रोजेक्ट को लीड करने के लिए प्रधानमंत्री राजीव गांधी ने एक ऐसे व्यक्ति को चुना जिसने आज तक अपनी लाइफ में कभी सुपर कंप्यूटर नहीं देखा था, लेकिन उन्हें सुपर कंप्यूटर से रिलेटेड सारे शॉर्टकट्स पता थे। जब प्रधानमंत्री राजीव गांधी भाटकर से मिले तो प्रधानमंत्री ने भाटकर से 3 क्वेश्चंस पूछे। प्रधानमंत्री, क्या हम ये बना पाएंगे? भाटकर, मैंने आज तक सुपर कंप्यूटर नहीं देखा है, लेकिन मैंने कई सुपर कंप्यूटर की पिक्चर्स देखी है, सो आई एम श्योर कि हम ये कर लेंगे। प्रधानमंत्री, इसे बनाने में कितना वक्त लगेगा? भाटकर, जितना हम कई सुपर कंप्यूटर को यूएस से लाने में लगाएंगे उससे भी कम। प्रधानमंत्री, इसमें कितना पैसा लगेगा? भाटकर, इंडिया के पहले सुपर कंप्यूटर के टेक्नोलॉजी डेवलपमेंट, कमीशनिंग एंड इंस्टॉलिंग में ये सब एक कई सुपर कंप्यूटर के कॉस्ट से भी कम दाम में हो जाएगा। ये सब सुनने के बाद प्रधानमंत्री काफ़ी रिलैक्स हुए और उन्होंने इस प्रोजेक्ट को हरी झंडी दे दी। इसके बाद पूरे इंडिया से काबिल साइंटिस्ट को पुणे में CDAC में बुलाया गया और 3 साल के अंदर ही 1991 में इंडिया को अपना पहला सुपर कंप्यूटर परम 8000 मिला। पहली बार किसी डेवलपिंग कंट्री ने अपने कदम एडवांस्ड कंप्यूटर टेक्नोलॉजी में रखा था। इंडिया की इस कामयाबी पर पूरी दुनिया को हैरानी थी। कई देशों ने तो यहाँ तक कह दिया था कि परम 8000 एक सुपर कंप्यूटर है ही नहीं। इसलिए भाटकर इसे मेजर इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस और एग्जीबिशन में ले गए, जहां इस कंप्यूटर की काबिलियत को देखकर सबने इसे सुपर कंप्यूटर डिक्लेयर कर दिया। यूएस के एक न्यूज़पेपर ने यहाँ तक पब्लिश कर दिया था कि डिनाइड सुपर कंप्यूटर एंग्री इंडिया डज इट, मतलब सुपर कंप्यूटर के एक्सपोर्ट को बंद करने की वजह से गुस्से में इंडिया ने अपना खुद का सुपर कंप्यूटर बना लिया। मल्टी-प्रोसेसर मशीन परम 8000 was benchmarked at 5G flops, जो इस दुनिया का सेकंड फास्टेस्ट सुपर कंप्यूटर बना। परम 8000 का कॉस्ट क्रे सुपर कंप्यूटर के कॉस्ट से आधे से भी कम था, पर इसका काम क्रे सुपर कंप्यूटर के बराबर का ही था। इसके बाद परम 8000 ने खुद की एक हाई परफॉर्मेंस पैरेलल कंप्यूटर की सीरीज खड़ी कर दी, जिसमें परम 20000 और परम पद्मा आता है, जो 2002 में बना था, with highest peak speed of 1 teraflops। अब इसी सीरीज में लेटेस्ट मशीन आई है परम ईशान और परम कंचनजंगा। परम ईशान IIT गुवाहाटी और परम कंचनजंगा NIT सिक्किम में लगाई गई है, वहाँ के फैकल्टी और स्टूडेंट के रिसर्च को सपोर्ट करने के लिए। इंडियन साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी में अपने महत्वपूर्ण योगदान के लिए भाटकर को 2015 में पद्म भूषण से सम्मानित किया गया था। अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आई हो तो प्लीज़ इसे लाइक और शेयर करें।
Okay, so I'm sure that all of you might have enjoyed and even feel a proud about what India can do, right? And whenever, and this is not just one instant. There are many instances where people have actually, giving support to India. Just to give you another example, after like our nuclear blast in 1998, 1999, Americans, they have put a ban on so many like different technology and all this thing, but then India never actually looked back from that point. They have developed their own indigenous like a technology, right? So it is always like, I always feel proud that when I'm talking about those kind of like instances, that our capability actually comes out when somebody denies it. It should not be like that, but India can do much more, and I'm sure that the people like you who are like, the very bright students, and they can develop so many like new things and other thing, and this is the right actually time for all of you to like, experiment and do the things, right? So this was like kind of like a one boost to, I can say, IT sector, because it is kind of like, a creating a brand. So I don't know how many of you know, but brand creation plays a major role. Now let me give you one example. I mean, when I say the Finland, so you may say this thing, okay, this might be like, like a country in Scandinavia and all this thing. Now Finland is now become so popular in entire world because of the one company, and that one company was a Nokia. Anyways, now Nokia is no more like a super kind of like a leader, but from 2000 to up to like, I can say, up to 2010, 2009, it was like, the major kind of like a player in like a phone industry, and that has become like an identity for that particular like a company, right? And their engineers and all this thing. So similar to that, this particular effort has also worked to establish our IT industry, right? So going further, now we have looked at the entrepreneur side, we have looked at from the, the political and economy side. Now we also wanted to, I wanted to talk about like a educationalist. So there were like a two educationalists specifically. There are many, but these two names I wanted to take. I'm sure that all of you have heard about NIIT, and in our time NIIT was so popular. I mean, if you go to any nook and corner of like a Mumbai, you will at least find one particular NIIT, right? So these were the people, Sri Rajendra Singh Pawar and Sri Vijay K. Thadani, who actually understood the importance of that. They both are actually IIT Delhi graduate, and they see that thing. There is a huge potential in IT sector, and because all Indian institute, all I can say the Indian university, they do not have the advanced program, or they even only like a, few IITs and some top ranking universities, they were running some program in computer science and programming and all that thing, and that was not enough. So they see that opportunity over there, and they started with like, their kind of like a this institute idea, that let me just start with, this institute where we are going to train people who will be employed in particular like a software industry, where we require so many programmers, we need different kind of like a skill set. So which skill set are missing? Because if you try to study that in engineering, it is going to take 4 years, and at that time there were not so many engineering college. Even to get it into engineering was like a quite difficult. So many people, I mean, and the number of engineers that India was produced, that was not enough to, supply to this particular thing. So this NIT, they started with their own curriculum, they started with those kind of thing, and right from its establishment in I can say late 80s up to now, they have produced more than 35 million people. So that's an amazing kind of like a contribution that they have given, and still they are into like education right now. They are not much popular in India right now, but their footprint is in like, 30 plus country, and now they have also moved to like a consultancy business, and developing a product for that thing. But it has played a major role. So many people actually, get trained. I know some of my friends who actually done their graduation from the commerce stream or art stream, but they were finding that, oh, after doing BCom we might not get the job, so they have enrolled into like NIT, done some kind of 1 year programming course, and after that they even got a chance to go to abroad, and now they are even settled well over there. So whenever I try to connect with them, they always say one thing, that joining NIT was my best decision in my life, and because of that decision I'm able to reach to this particular like a point. So I'm sure that there might be many such kind of like a story. I know a couple of my friends who are like in mechanical engineer, and they also parallelly like a join NIT, and then they moved into like a software industry, and now they are at a really big position, and they are doing really fine. So there is an immense contribution by NIT in I can say supporting India's IT industry, right? So this particular, like, without mentioning, I don't think so that our presentation might be the complete one. Now after that, I also wanted to discuss about some non-government organization who also played a major role in making India a superpower in IT industry. So that was like the two name that I wanted to tell. I mean, there are many people, but these two are like a major contributor. So one is Sri Harish Mehta, and soon we'll be also having his actually guest lecture in our VIT. So Harish Mehta is a founder member of NASCOM. He was the person who actually started with the idea of NASCOM. He realized that if we have to promote our IT industry, we need to create some kind of like a brand. We need to come up with some kind of like the idea which can actually help us to make India to such a great success. And this particular like non-government organization, they work from both the side. They also help industry people, and also work like a government agencies to make up policies, and working as a like a license partner for them. And it was a big kind of like a movement, and it was so successful that right now, if we say, the NASCOM is kind of like an authority in saying like in policy making or taking like a big decision at the government level. And also what this particular like Harish sir, I mean, or Harish Mehta, so he founded that. And NASCOM is not just giving impact on India, but it is also giving impact to like outside India. So I'll be showing you one small clip about that thing later on. So it is not just supporting IT industry in India, but also abroad. And in 1992, he actually recruited Devang Mehta. So I'm sure that all of you might be, he was like a poster boy in IT industry, and has a tremendous contribution, because from 1991 to 2001, he was a president of NASCOM, and he done big job in promoting like Indian companies and those things. Unfortunately, he died at a very young age in 2001. He went to like a Sydney, and to attend some conference over there. He has a massive heart attack and he passed away. But a multi-talented person. And if Indian IT industry is owing to somebody, so these are the two people who actually like you can see. And NASCOM, they have multiple offices in Mumbai near to Goregaon. You can see there is a huge building, and they do. And what they actually do, they actually create an ecosystem for the IT industry. They support so many like a startup and all this thing. They run so many like a program incubators and all this thing. If you are interested more about like NASCOM, go to their website, look at those things. They conduct various kind of like a program, and I think as a IT and computer engineer, all of you should be like taking advantage of that. So this Devang Mehta and Harish Mehta played a very major role, and they were the force behind the Indian government, that you have to make this kind of like a policy change. This is what policy, and they got one particular big success in 1987. What was that? That was the Copyright Act, passing of the Copyright Act. India were having like a Copyright Act, but it was not applicable to the software. Now in India, if you wanted to work on like a software, it also very important that that software need to be protected, and to for that protection we need some kind of like a very strong law. So they actually lobbied for that thing, no, that you have to do on this thing. They also actually played a major role when Rajiv Gandhi was making like IT industry, I mean the import duty and all this thing extremely like to a minimum value. So in that work also they have contributed. But if I have to come up with this thing, so one major contribution is by implementing and making government to implement this 1987 like a copyright law. And it was so strong that that was the first law in entire world which was like heavily protected this basically the software industry. And that was the reason that many people actually started to give work to like those kind of like to Indian companies, and they become they get some kind of like a confidence in the Indian company, and then even in the Indian government system that okay, the Indian government system is going to protect to our intellectual property, right? So that was kind of like a major thing. Now let me just show you one particular like a story of I mean NASCOM, maybe some part of like a Devang Mehta what he wanted to see, and then we'll also see the impact.
It all began more than 2 decades ago. In the early 1980s, India's fledgling IT sector found a very unlikely champion in a New Delhi chartered accountant, Devang Mehta. Devang Mehta, a 20-something with a pioneering spirit, sees a world where India will rule the roost based on its technology strengths and immense skilled IT manpower pool.
The real dream, the vision, is to see that India really becomes an IT superpower.
But he realizes early in the day that the Indian IT industry will need to differentiate itself in unique and breakthrough ways to achieve leadership.
If Indians could do well in the Silicon Valley or somewhere else, why can't we do that from India?
Taking over the reins of NASCOM, Devang begins the immense task of building the software and services industry. He lobbies relentlessly with the government for crucial IT industry concessions.
In 1988, the word lobbying was considered very bad in India. Today it is acceptable. So we try to lobby with Government of India, state governments, including with the Capitol Hill.
He builds awareness about the emerging software and services market and its growing relevance to the Indian economy.
If IT industry can raise the GDP of the nation, if we can remove poverty, if we can bring education to everybody, that will be the day will be very happy.
Championing the software cause with passion, Devang travels the world, holding aloft the Indian software and services banner. Today, the IT industry has adopted his mantra, only by constantly innovating can we stay ahead, as its own, and IT alone can bridge the urban-rural, gender and digital divide in India. In times to come, the IT sector will seek many more champions of innovation to keep India's IT sector ahead in the international arena.
So you can see from the video, Devang Mehta was like very visionary, and you will be surprised to know he even not being like a programmer or the computer engineer or nothing. He was having a commerce background, and it is a very interesting story that he was into journalism, and he was very passionate about this new upcoming technology as like a computer, and he used to write like articles in newspaper. And this Harish Mehta, this gentleman, he was actually reading those kind of like article, and he found that oh, this guy is like very interesting, and maybe he has some kind of like a vision. So why don't we like invite to like a NASCOM, and he appointed him as a like as a like a president, and rest is the history. So now we can see that thing, his dream has come to fulfill, that India has become like a superpower into like this IT and software industry. And that was like a I can say the best kind of things need to be happen. So what the point I wanted to bring is that there are so many like people behind this success story, and then each and everyone has a very unique story, each and everyone has a different kind of like their thing. And also let me tell you that Deva Mehta, before he joined to NASCOM and he become so successful, he actually tried in a various field, in multimedia, in a journalism, in even arts, even in filmmaking. And then finally he settled, and his true potential come into like a promoting like a software, right? So that's how it goes. So that's a very interesting one. Now with this particular kind of like a thing, at that time, in I can say the early 90s, there were like a many like the Indian students who are like went abroad to study and to do their masters, and they actually started to getting like a fame into the Silicon Valley, and they become like a role models. When people like us, I mean, when I was in school and maybe in college, that time we were reading about like Shri Sabir Bhatia, Vinod Khosla, Ajay Bhatt, Vinod Dham. Those are the people, I mean, we used to have. So that kind of like a role model. So when people start getting into that particular like a field, so I'm here just mentioning only like a few names, but there are like a array of people who have done this tremendous kind of like a work. Sabir Bhatia, all of you know that in 1995-96 he come up with the idea of Hotmail, and at that time Microsoft actually purchased this Hotmail, and that deal was so big that people overnight he become like the IT sensational, and then become like a phenomena. Everybody like started thinking him as a like a legend, and doing about that thing. So Vinod Khosla is a Microsoft's Sun System founder, and like a very very popular like the entrepreneur, and contributed in many companies. Sri Ajay Bhatt, right now the USB that you are using, so he's a pioneer for that thing, specifically he use USB standards and making those kind of like a USB. Then Ruchi Sangvi is the first Indian born foreign educated like a engineer into the Facebook. So right now in a Facebook that you are looking at like news feed and all this thing, so she was the person who actually started with this particular like the features and including into that thing. Vinod Dham was like a great guy who actually come up with the first Intel chip, and now rest of the story all of you know that Intel has become like a de facto in computing and all this thing. And then Padma Shri Warrior is also like one of the first, I can say, the woman engineer who actually reached to a very top. So he actually worked with the Motorola with so many like a different position, and then currently she is actually working in a Cisco, and making all that operations in into Cisco and all this. So very big and popular like engineers who actually made impact on this thing. Now this kind of like things also create as the brand for us. People started recognizing the Indian talent, and they understood that Indian education system is a like very strong like a foundation. The people who come up from those kind of like a institute, or even from like some good universities, they can create lots of like a thing. So these are the role models of that thing, and that kind of created a value creation of like our IT industry in USA. So let me just show you that with a small video. all of you have seen that, like, I mean, how NASCOM is, like, working even in USA, so many states, they are actually supported by our Indian companies. So it is great to know that thing, that it is not just creating opportunities in India, but it is also creating lots of opportunity in another one. And let me tell you that, I mean, in NASCOM, it is so successful model that China, then Pakistan, Bangladesh, and so many other, even the European Union, they started to copy this particular like a model. I remember that when I was when I was doing my higher studies, I was with one my Pakistani friend. He used to work in PASCOM, so they generally used to call it as a PASCOM, and but unfortunately they do not have that kind of like a ecosystem, right? So when I'm talking about this ecosystem, it's a big thing. So people will give you the work only when they try to trust it, and that trust comes from various factors. So various point I have shown in my presentation, that actually created a trust value for India. So in India, if you are like giving order to some company, and let's say this company is going to fail in deliver, there are number of companies available who can take it over and immediately complete your work. So that reliability is there. Unfortunately, that kind of like a reliability could not be created at those particular company, and that model could not survive. But still, people, they study this particular model as a, like a very successful case study, and they try to like emulate it, especially in African countries, or you can say third world country, and even in some of the European countries, right? So that I can say it's a trademark for India. So now going further, so Indian parks and hubs, so it is not like that IT hubs and these are like a very new to right now. It is a very old concept in India. Early like a 70s, there was a Nariman point, which is known as a, like the business point. So initially TCS company and everything actually started from Nariman point, but slowly it start getting like a popular, the rent and everything becomes so expensive. So another kind of like a area was created in Andheri. Right now it is known as a SIPS. So where it becomes like IT park. Even in Mumbai, you see, so there are many IT parks. Maybe we have in a Sieves, we have in a Thana, then we have in like Powai. So at various location in India, people just in Mumbai itself, you can say 3 to 4 different kind of like IT parks and hubs have been like comed up. So in India, there are across the India, there are so many like cities. Just to name a few: Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Mumbai, then Gurgaon, Delhi, Haryana, Chandigarh. So these are like very very like a popular like a kind of like a hubs that we have, and that is only possible because of the government support. Overall, that particular like a community, all the resources that actually come to it, and they are able to like create those kind of like a different IT parks. And I can say that I've been lucky to see some of the like a good IT park in Chennai, in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, sorry, in Calcutta, then in Delhi, sorry, in NCR, so in Pune, and obviously in Mumbai. So it is good to see that how this particular like the IT parks have been evolved and able to see that thing. So that's a I can say one of the major driver, because India is also investing a lot in developing those infrastructure. So once you have this kind of like infrastructure, obviously the success start coming to you, right? So in product and all this thing, so I mentioned to you earlier that India initially IBM was there, hardware and software, and later on IBM actually moved out of India in early like 80s because of this so many like restriction in India. And in a one way it is a good thing, because of that there are many companies who try to like fill that particular vacuum. So one by TCS, one by like Infosys, and the same time even the Wipro has actually started their particular like operation. I have not mentioned about the Wipro over here because I have taken just one example of like Narayan Murthy, and Wipro and all these other companies have similar kind of like a story. So that's why I just wanted to take one particular like a case. So initially it was like customized software, like turnkey projects was like happening, and then shrink wrap. So what is shrink wrap is that basically you try to write a software for somebody else, and then there is a another brand name which is actually used to sell this particular like a software. Then later on, India got like software integration part. Lots of like a data entry work started to come to entry, and there was like a big boom, right? Everybody started to have like a small computer center, and then text and so many kind of like things they try to convert into like a digital and all this thing. So that software integration was also getting part, and personal computer programs were gaining popularity. So over there also India has done lots of things. Then services, BPOs and KPOs start coming, and so in that way India has started to growing in this particular like a direction, right? So if we have to see what are the key drivers for that. So first of all, we used to get like a location benefit. Basic our the I can say clients are in USA and Canada, so there is a 12 hours difference. So basically the advantage they get is that 24 by 7 operation. So when they are like a down, so Indians are up, and by that time they are also handling all those things. And India is producing lots of skilled manpower because of our university program, a program like NIT and all this thing able to generate this thing. And it is with such a low cost that what generally you pay in USA, in one third of that cost you are able to actually make it in India. And the best part is that India has inherited the quality services, and over there also NASCOM has played a major role. They have defined several kind of like service checks and quality checks into that thing, so that automatically our processes and software manufacturing and all this thing become better and better, and now it is considered as a big branch in international value. And because we have done lots of work in like program development, so Indian people they have good expertise in project management, right? So there is a high kind of agility, high kind of like a rigidity and all this thing. Experience is quite good, and I have shown you that from an infrastructure point of view also, like mini IT park and those kind of like a economic zone and other thing which has been produced, so that it becomes very easy. And obviously the advantage is like in English language, right? So this particular like the are the key drivers for this success story into that thing. And if I have to look at the IT industry timeline, so the major thing happens in 1970s. We have seen couple of things where India able to get like its first contract outside in Swiss company. Then in 1980s there were major reforms in policies. Again in 90, the company started to become growing. We are entering into the globalization. In 2000, 2010 was like Y2K, and somebody else BPOs and all those things started to come into this one. And now in 2020, now India has already entered into like AI field, data science field, and lots of jobs actually coming to India. So that's a very brief I can say IT industry timeline. And this also showing that how basically it started like evaluated in IT sector. So with this presentation I would like to end my presentation. I'm sorry that I have actually gone I have taken too much time for that, but I hope that all of you have enjoyed this particular bit. Now I'm open to like a question and answer, and in case if you have anything, you can always write back to me. This is my website. If you like to connect with me on a LinkedIn, so all here also you can connect with me. So I'll be happy to take if there is any question. Hello. Hello. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Sir, you're audible.
Yeah. So I just complete my presentation. So if we need to take up any questions or anything that students have to ask or anything, so I will try my best to answer their queries. So if there is no question, maybe we can end the presentation over here.
Yes, sir. We can't see any questions currently in the chat box. So I would just like to take this opportunity to thank you, sir, that you have given such an amazing and inspiring stories we have to hear. And definitely, I think our viewers would definitely like these inspiring stories, and it will also inspire them to do something. And they, in the coming time, become a success story, and we would then describe it as story and inspiring the upcoming generation. So,
Yeah.
thanks a lot for giving such of your time, and the presentation and the session is really amazing.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much to all the organization, especially to you, ma'am, Amit sir, and computer department for giving me this opportunity. I hope that student appreciate this particular like history of our Indian IT industry, and maybe they draw some kind of inspiration from that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
I now declare that the event, the session has been completed. Thank you everyone for attending the session and stay tuned for the upcoming events. Thank you.